What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting live stream for round 2 of the Masters. It's a special one because we have an important announcement right off the hop. But first off, welcome on in, and hopefully you're having yourself a solid start to the week. I can see we have a lot of the Ship It crew down there, which we'll get to that here in a second. But welcome on in, everyone on that side. Whether you're a regular here, whether you're somebody watching this for the first time, I want to welcome you guys into the live stream here. And what you can expect here is coverage of everything to expect for tomorrow. We're going to talk about the golf course, weather conditions, how that should impact your strategy for Friday. And then afterwards, we're going to go through both the DFS and prop side of things and give you some pointers for how to go out there and play the slate. So out there for Showdown, we'll talk about game theory ownership is going to be pretty much the entire talking point out there from that side of things. And then after that, on the prop side, I do a lot of statistical averages. I do a lot of prop averages and projections out there. So we'll talk about that, right? Some of the deficiencies when it comes to the pricing and where on Prize Picks and Underdog you might be able to find some value. So that would also apply to the DraftKings Pick 6. So if that is something that you're working with, you can also use it for that kind of format. But we got a bunch of you down there. Nate, Penguin, Trent, welcome on in. Joshua, Colin, a lot of the Ship It crew down there. You'd love to see it. Carl had a good day today, myself included. So you'll love to see that. Great. First off, welcome into the live stream. Sean wants some round 2 showdown coverage. We've got you covered. Hoop had a good core this week. Okay, that's good to see. Brant down there. What's going on? We got Dana, Carl, Bryson killed it. Absolutely. He's an absolute stud. I'm sure we'll talk about Bryson quite a bit. Got Steven, Evan, Carl, Bolito down there, Joanne, and Patrick. Welcome on into the show. So let's start it off with this important announcement. So it's obviously already been announced over there on Twitter. If you guys haven't seen, these streams out here for rounds 3 and 4, it's starting this week, round 2, are all going to be presented by Ship It Nation. So this isn't just a sponsorship that I'm doing out here for the Showdown streams. That is part of the partnership that I'm doing over here with Ship It Nation. But it's a little bit more than that, right? We're trying to start to work together a little bit more, trying to bring our communities a little bit closer together. And for rounds 3 and 4 Showdown, I'm going to be doing a lot of shows in conjunction with them. In fact, all the round 3 and 4 shows for the foreseeable future. So that's a partnership that we just started here tonight. And as part of that, right, we're going to have a little bit of a discount available to anybody joining there. So we'll talk more about that later. We're not going to do the whole promo right now, but more so just want to talk about what you're going to, be expecting to see, right? Which are round 3 and 4 streams every single week. Round 2 might be a part of that for some of the bigger events like we have here for the Masters. But I'm somebody that, just like you guys over there at Ship It Nation, is a lot more process oriented than just going out there and giving picks. So that is part of my process. So you will see me, right, talk up some players tonight. So I know maybe not all of you are used to seeing that sort of content, but I try and make it as process-based as possible. So I will talk through some of my top plays and whatnot, guys that I'm getting over the field on, but hopefully that just gives you some perspective on how to go out there and play it yourself. So it'll be a good little blend of strategy, weather strategy, game theory, projections, and all your questions down there in live chat. So I cover a lot of the DFS side of things. You've probably seen that with some of my content if you've seen it over there on YouTube before, but also I do a lot of prop content too. So the first half of these streams is going to be focusing on the DFS side of things, DraftKings, Showdown, weekend slate, if we're over there for Saturday talking about that. And then the second half of the live stream is where we're going to talk about props. So that's what you can expect if you're a new person around here. And yeah, proud to be a partner over there with Ship It Nation. They have, in my opinion, some of the best DFS players in the industry, right, running that website. Guys like Hoop, Tambo, you see them winning GPPs all the time. And frankly, how I judge a tout site, right, how I judge a site that's providing fantasy advice is based on the success of their leaders, right? And obviously bringing in DGen75, who's a buddy of mine, a lot of collaboration to come there. So I don't want to spoil anything. I'll just leave you with a little teaser there with the DGen75 stuff. Obviously, a lot of thoughts and prayers go into him as he's battling cancer. But with them adding DGen75, now they have arguably the best golf product in the entire industry. So at least for my money, they're definitely up there. They have a very well-rounded team when it comes to every single sport. So they don't just cover PGA, right? I think that's why this, sponsorship makes a lot of sense, is they cover NFL, NBA, PGA, MMA, NHL, MLB, NASCAR, and college football. So they have all of that under one umbrella. So obviously, right, I do football and golf content over here, that's not going to change, right? I'm still doing my Patreon, still providing all of that content to you guys. But on top of that, right, I'm somebody that's a proponent of having multiple subscriptions, right, out there for your fantasy stuff. So on top of going out there, being a part of my Patreon, I'd recommend at the very least, right, if you're just only playing golf, right, becoming a part of the Ship It Nation golf crew. So again, you get all the tools from DGen75, the Stone, which is incredibly valuable over there, Hoops Core, which this week is apparently on fire after day one. Didn't get a chance to take a look at it myself, but that's pretty sweet to see. You get all of their content for Showdown over there. Tambo, all of his information. I mean, he's a mastermind when it comes to taking down this GPPs. And then a little bit of influence for me. I'm going to be a part of the Discord server over there. I'm doing a lot of prop stuff over there on that side. But of course, just trying to give my 2 cents every now and then when it comes to DFS too. So it's, again, not just a sponsorship out here for the live stream. And it's a little bit more than that. Again, a partnership that, who knows, may end up being something a little bit more when it comes down the line. But that's what we're working with right now. So welcome on in all the Ship It crew down there. I know you guys are all down there in live chat right now. And I appreciate all of you. Welcome on in, and hopefully we can bring you guys a lot of valuable advice. So with that being said, let's go ahead and hop on in. So if you're part of the Ship It crew, go ahead, let me know down there in chat. And any regulars, make sure your voice is known out there as well. But in terms of the golf course today, it played exactly like I expected. We were calling for about a 1 over par scoring average. It played 1.03 over par. So pretty close, about as close as we can get when it comes to that projection. And we're probably going to see about the same thing tomorrow. So not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the forecast for Friday is calling for windy conditions the entire day. And though I think it'll be a little bit firmer and faster, depending on pin locations, I don't think it's going to be all that much harder than what we had for Thursday. So obviously some guys are going to be playing more than 18 holes tomorrow. We didn't end up finishing round 1, which isn't going to be a problem, by the way. The round is going to start at its normal starting time at 8 a.m. local time. You have guys like Adrian Moronk that already finished their round. In fact, were finished for about an hour before the end of play happened, that are among your first groups to go out. So the resumption of play is at 7:50. I think they're going to try and have them at the course at 7:45. Resumption's actually at 7:50. The start of round 2, so the lock on DraftKings, right, which is important to know, right, whether they're going to move back lock or not tomorrow morning. Lock is going to be at 8 p.m. So one of the edges that I normally take, right, for a slate where there's a little bit of carryover from Thursday into Friday, is I'll go out there and try and take guys that get hot in the morning, right? So if they start out there, they're finishing round 1 and they end with like 2 of 3 birdies or something like that, I'll try and tail them for the next round, as oftentimes they'll take that momentum, right? Whatever swing thought they woke up with, whatever feel they woke up with out there on Friday, and can carry that into their round 2 action. So that is something that I try and take advantage of when we can. But because of the lock situation, we're not going to be getting that out there for Friday. So it's a little bit unfortunate. Obviously, they're trying to just get the tournament moving out there because of the delay. So I can't blame them, but it does take away what is, in my opinion, one of the sneakier edges that you can find when playing PGA DFS. In terms of other things I noticed with the course, it's still running firm and faster than you'd think, right? They got quite a bit of rain overnight, but the greens had pretty good first bounce to them. That first bounce was quite significant, even when you were hitting some wedge shots. And on top of that, as we got towards the afternoon, they got a lot faster. So these greens are notoriously firm and fast, with the sub-air systems probably pumping overnight. It wouldn't surprise me if the course may be a little bit firmer and faster than what we had for round 1. So, I mentioned the scoring average probably being pretty similar to what we had for today. If anything, it's going to play slightly harder, right, than what we had there for round 1. So we'll circle back on all the course discussion when we're talking about props, a little bit more important, right, when we get to that side of things. But just want to set the stage of what to expect out there for Friday. So probably something between 1, maybe 1.5 over par is at least as of right now without the pin locations. I didn't see them before we went live, so maybe they did post them after we went live out there. But yeah, as of right now without pins, something in that 1 to 1.5 over par range. In terms of weather, I do think there's going to be a slight edge to take advantage of. And I'm not sure if it's going to be definitive as there are cold conditions in the morning, but along with the cooler conditions are lower wind gusts, lower sustained winds out there from like, let's say 7 to 10 a.m. local time. In that window, you're probably going to see guys go a little bit lower. A lot of that's going to be guys finishing their round one. And then any of those guys that are starting at 8 a.m. local, so Morant group, right, all the guys from like 8 to maybe 9:30 local, are I think going to start in at least slightly better conditions than what we get later in the day, right? The sustained winds go from like, 10, maybe 15 miles an hour, up to 20 to 22 by the time we get to the PM hours. And then your wind gusts are in that 35 to 40 mile an hour range. So crazy stuff out there. It's, kind of what we saw today. I'd say maybe slightly worse when it comes to the actual strength of the wind. And though there's only a micro edge to be had, you also have slightly more receptive greens early on. But the only negative to taking guys going off early is that it is going to be a little bit cool, right? 54 degrees, 56 degrees Fahrenheit is a little bit cooler than what we want in optimal conditions. But I could see it playing maybe half a stroke easier. So if you take a look at the two quote unquote waves today, and there are no waves, right, at a golf course, a major like this, where there aren't two defined sets of tee times, and there's no 2-3 hour gap, right, between the two quote unquote waves. If you just split it down the middle, that's how Data Golf does this, right? They just take the tee times, they split it down the middle. They call one side AM, they call one side PM when they're in this circumstance. It played 0.7 shots easier. So the wind gusts were pretty strong early. I would say that they were calm for maybe the first hour or two, kind of like we're expecting for round two, right? The first maybe hour and a half, 2 hours, it's going to be a little bit calmer than the afternoon. But on top of that, you had those more receptive conditions. So I think out there for Friday, you're going to see the same kind of edge. Now, it might not be a whole 0.75 shots like it was out there for round one. It was 0.74 shots. But I think something in that 0.4 to 0.5 shot range wouldn't be out of the ordinary. So if you're going to take any sort of a weather edge out there for Showdown, which of course is how I go out there and play on these kind of slates, I take that, game theory, combine that, build lineups that are constructed differently salary-wise than the rest of the industry. And that's how I go out there and profit out there for round two. So it's a strategy that I don't change up very much, right? It's all about the game theory, all about taking pivots out there in my lineups. And then on top of that, trying to make sure that I'm leaning into any sort of weather edge that's to be had. So if there's any weather edge tomorrow, right, I think it's going to be taking guys that are going off early. Outside of that, you'd probably play it straight up, right? If you think that the cooler conditions are going to offset that, then you couldn't say that the PM guys are going to be better, right? Because sure, they're playing in warmer conditions, but they're also playing in slightly higher wind gusts. So I think if anything, right, maybe you're not buying the whole AM conditions thing. I get that, right? Especially if you're somebody that's a temperature truther, right? That really looks at temperature and, takes that into consideration. But to me, 60 degrees, 56 degrees isn't terrible, right? If it was 45 degrees, it'd probably be a different story. But, it's getting up to 60 by the time that it's 9 a.m. I could see there being a little bit of an edge to be had. So that's something that I'm doing. If you're going to just throw that out, probably just make it a toss-up. Play guys that are playing whenever. Just because of that, though, I am playing like 40, 50 lineups for tomorrow, so I'm going to have quite a bit of exposure. I'm not only playing guys that are starting early. So a lot of the guys that I'm squeezing into my player pool, a lot of my late ads out there for Friday were guys that are starting early, but there are still conviction plays that I'm taking towards the middle to the latter half of tee times. But just know that I do think you could see a little bit of an edge out there. So let me go ahead and bring up my projections now. We'll go ahead and talk through some of the game theory. So we'll talk through Ship It a little bit later. They actually have a big UFC card tomorrow, which I'm going to be using Ship It for 100% to go out there and try and figure out how to build some lineups. I'm somebody that plays MMA DFS. You may have seen me posting GPP winning lineups quite often, actually, out there when it comes to playing UFC stuff. And I don't watch the sport very often, right? I'll watch the big cards. I'll watch the main events, that kind of thing. I'll stream it, just watch it, whatever. I won't pay for any of that bullshit. But what I do love, especially about DFS on the side, it is all game theory. All you have to do, at least in my opinion, this is what I do when I go out there, is I find people with really good ownership projections, and then I just take the game theory side. The only spots that I'll take as conviction plays are maybe guys that are projecting just 20, 30 points higher than the rest of the industry. But I'm going to really have to take a look at what Ship It has. I haven't taken a look at the UFC stuff before, but as somebody that doesn't watch the fights, doesn't do the research, having those projections is going to be extremely helpful. So I can use those I'm going to use the game theory, right? I'm always going to look at the popular plays that are popping on different optimizers. But now that I have that, it's going to make it even more valuable. So we'll talk about that later. It's actually going to be a little segment that we do. We talk through some of the top UFC projections over there on Ship It. But yeah, looking forward to that a lot. But these are my projections, right? So obviously Ship It has their own showdown stuff that they post over there on that site. It's made by the best in the industry, so you can't go wrong there. This is my stuff, which I'm partial to, right? Obviously, if there's one site that I maybe like a little bit more than Ship It, it might be my own, but I think that's fair to say. But yeah, on here we have all the ownership on here, and this is really what we go through when we talk through DFS on here. So we're gonna have some plays that I talk through. Again, some people on here might not be used to seeing plays out there from their tout, but it's something that I do talk through. And the main reason I do it is to show you the types of players that I'm getting to. So even in my DFS previews, like my core plays, my value plays, that's the whole idea of that. So that's why I always tell people that when I'm coming, people are coming to my content, is because I want this to be a lot more about the types of players that I'm getting to, the types of stats I'm looking at, right? That game theory side that I'm considering, than really the names that we're bringing up. So we're going to talk through some of these players, but just know that my strategy out here for Friday Showdown, it'll be the same out there for Saturday, is almost always the same, right? It's take that weather edge and then combine game theory. So when we go through tier by tier, we're just going to talk about ownership. So up top, your chalk is on guys like Scotty Scheffler, right? Obviously, -6 score, world #1. All of that is going to make him obvious chalk, but I still only have him at about 30.7% ownership. So something in that 30% range is what you're probably going to get on Scotty and GPPs. Now, I think in cash, 50-60%, right? You're playing in a high dollar single entry, right? So where people are going to be a little bit more nitty when they're going out there and building their lineups, he might be 40-50% owned, those sort of contests. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, players that are playing in, I'd say the $50 to $100 stakes or more when they're playing showdown lineups, play with a lack of testicular fortitude, is what I'll say there. They don't play with any sort of boldness out there when they're building lineups. So players like Scotty that feel safe, that obvious, super chalky play in cash lineups, is often even higher owned, right, out there in those sort of formats. So a Scotty Scheffler for round 2 showdown is probably not a play that I like getting to. Now, if you're going to take Scotty, just make sure that you're taking him in at least 50% of your lineup. So if you're going to take a chalky player that's 25-30% owned, just get that leverage to the field, right? Take him in at least 1.8x the field, 2x the field would be ideal out there for your exposure. But when anytime somebody's 30% owned, it's an automatic fade for me, right? Like if you've been here in my content, if you're a regular out here in my channel, it's not even a thought, right? I'm not going to play a 30% owned guy out there for round 2 showdown. I don't care if it's Jesus walking himself. I'm not going to take them out there in my lineups because I know it's golf. I know it's an 18-hole sample size. And even a hack like me that's a 10 handicap has shot into 74 before, +2 out there in a round of golf. And that's about as good as it's ever going to get for me. And if I can do that, right, there's a slapdick up here that didn't play well in round 1 that can go out there and have that same sort of rebound. So you have a lot of volatility, a lot of variance when it comes to the sport of golf. And I think you have to try and embrace that even more when you're out there in a round 2 showdown. I want to catch up on chat. So something I do here is I try and go through chat as much as I can as we're actually during the live stream. I like to go through some of that intro first and whatnot, but let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. Lil Crown and Coke in the cup, so we're enjoying ourselves out here on Thursday. Hopefully you guys are out there as well, enjoying your Thursday evening. Patrick is locking Tiger Woods. Bold strategy, but I do think he's going to get some ownership. So he will be a talking point at some point. What's going on, Joanne? What's going on, Jake? Sanjay -9 tomorrow. Watch out. I do like him as a leverage play. -9 would be pretty nice. So hopefully you're right there with your call. You hope so. Yeah, me too. Congrats on the partnership, of course. Yeah, really looking forward to it. One of many live streams to come. Hideki was a little bit disappointing for sure. I faded him, so my disappointment's a little bit more of glee as somebody that took 0%. But same thing with Xander Schauffele, right? Obviously, Xander kind of rebounded, unlike a Hideki Matsuyama, but I expected a lot more. I thought they both would be some of the best plays. In fact, on my course breakdown on Monday, they were the two guys that I wanted to plant my flag behind. But when I see 25% ownership, 30% ownership out there in some of those single entries, I just can't do it, right? So just like with Scotty out here for tomorrow, I can't do it in a single round sample. Now, we played a lot of Scotty for main slate, right? He was a core play for me this week. I have him in 60% of my lineups. I just can't do it out there in Showdown. It's too much of a variant format, right? You exit him out as soon as DGen said he wasn't playing him. Oh, out there with Hideki, yeah, I couldn't blame you, right? New to my channel, looking forward to the content. Well, welcome Mark, I should say, out there to the live stream. Lots of ship it stuff down there. You'd love to see it. Are you right to say the back nine is killing some players? It always does. So 10's long, 10's like 500 yards downhill. It's a real tricky green. So that is always at least playing a little bit over par. Hole 11 is sometimes the hardest hole in property. It's 530 yards. It's actually even a little bit longer now that they moved back the tee box. And it, again, has water in play and a really tricky green. 12's the hole where everyone chokes on Sunday, right? When Tiger Woods won the Masters, that's where everyone just plunked it in the water. Yeah, that back nine is gnarly. It's a amen corner for a reason, right? You got to pray and just hope that you get through it with even par. Remember back when I were with Run DFS, great to see you guys having the opportunity to ship it. I wasn't with Run DFS ever. I was definitely buddies with them, though, absolutely. Thoughts on what the cut will be? I think +3 or +4. So something like that. If it's playing super windy, maybe it gets to +4. More conservatively, a +3 sort of thing. What's going on, Jason? First time for you. Well, welcome on in. Hopefully we can make it a good one. First time listening for Adam as well. Jack says, Willie Z and Braceface both threw away good rounds. Willie Z, yeah, only -2. Braceface, what, ended up -1 or -2 himself? Yeah, that back nine's tough. I got to say, if you shoot -1 on the back nine, you're probably feeling pretty good about it. I do think there are birdies to be had, but a lot of bogeys on that back nine. Luke really crushed it a few weeks back on Fridays with Smiley. Yeah, hopefully going to do that again. And maybe someday we can be the guest on that. Who knows? That's wishful thinking, but who knows? Maybe we can do that someday. I'd like to be on there with the Crown and Coke, of course, like we've got right here. We're going to get Prime Augusta. I think so. Especially if it plays firmer and faster. If they run those sub-airs like they can, I think it's going to be great. Smash the like button, by the way, guys. I don't like to ask this very often, so just do it so I don't have to ask you guys again. There's 194 of you down here in the live chat. I want to see at least 150 likes. So as of right now, I can't even see the live like counter. Honestly, I couldn't care for it that much. But I'm sure it's weak amateur numbers right now. Let's get that up at least over 100 right now. So if you're down here in the live chat, smash the like button. There's no excuse not to. And if you get it over 100, it's the last time you're going to hear from me. I'm not going to beg you for it. And I won't do that anyways. It's just not my style. Ship it plus Luke equals money. Yeah, I think that's a good formula, right? Print money at the end, especially with some of the prop stuff that we're going to add over there in the Discord. ROM 64 coming. I could see it, especially with, he was close today. The ball striking was great, just didn't get a lot out of his rounds. So I agree with that a lot. Welcome to the team, says Doc D. We're lucky to have your insight. Well, happy to be a part of it. So thank you, Doc D, for welcoming me. Nobody's talking about Aberg -2 with the 2 easy par 5s. Yeah, I think it'll actually be a little bit chalky. So, not a lot of content's come out yet, right? So I'm sure if there's showdown shows, Aberg would probably be talked up because I have him at 17.1%. So I don't know if he's that sneaky, actually. Have I ever been to the Masters? I haven't. It's a dream of mine, though. So I honestly kind of like a player that doesn't want to go there and just like visit because they want to go there and earn their way there. I want to earn my way there as a working media member. So I haven't applied yet. I'm going to do it for the first time next year. So got to start to get more exposure, maybe doing podcasts, getting my name out there a little bit more. That's a dream of mine. I'm working towards it. It's honestly, I've only been in this thing for 3 years total now at this point, 2 years seriously. We got to work towards that for sure. They're not just going to let any Joe Schmo in, right? So we got to make sure that we make it worth their time. Nick says, thoughts on Victor's first. I think that Victor's actually looked a lot better than a lot of people expected. I mean, he told people that he was not playing well, right, just yesterday. So I'd be a little bit hesitant about it, but I mean, he's playing pretty well. Donkey Chalk, yeah, Hideki's Donkey Chalk, if that's who you're talking about, or maybe even Scotty, right, out there at 30%. Thoughts on Wyndham 54 comment? I thought it was funny. He's a character, man. He's kind of like Brooks, right? I like Brooks because he's not afraid to speak his mind. He's not afraid to talk some shit. I love it. That's something that I do, especially out there with my buddies. And it's some friendly banter, right? He's not taking that seriously. Do you think he's actually, giving himself a better chance because they're playing 54 holes? It's just an underhanded comment to go out there and make headlines. So I think Wyndham Clark knows that any comment like that's going to get a lot of attention. It's going to give him more PIP numbers. It's going to be more profitable for him when it comes to that bonus. Are we running props on Underdog? Absolutely. A lot of stuff that we haven't finished yet from round one, but yeah, definitely going to talk round two. Scotty has his beard. Yeah, he's unbeatable right out there with that beard. Feeling a Clark pop tomorrow. Yeah, after those comments, I mean, out there with the 54 hole stuff, I could see he sounded damn confident. That's for damn sure. Dunlap hurt you today. Yeah, me too. I took him in like 5%. How does my process change for single entry? It's single entry. We'll actually talk lineup construction. We're going to have a whole segment on lineup construction later, but I'm a little bit more aggressive when I do that. Who's the one bounce back guy? We'll talk through plays and we'll hear in a little bit. So I'll circle back to you back on that, Cap. Cut line +3 or +4. Fred Couples over strokes was the freest prop. Yeah, him, VJ, those sort of players, Ola Hafable, probably all fit that description. Aberg was all puttered today. Yeah, I haven't looked at the stats. That doesn't really surprise me, though. He's kind of that sort of player. Finau and Neiman chalk. Kind of with Neiman. I think he's like 16, 17%. Aberg driver and putter only today. Thoughts on Wyndham, 0-4 in par fives, and one bad shot cost him a really good round. I agree with that. I think he's a good play out there for tomorrow. Unfortunately, he's the last tee time out. So if you're playing that weather edge, he's about the farthest you want from a play, right? He's not really the sort of player that you want to go with. So up top, if you're looking for pivots, right? Obviously, Scotty's a little bit chalky. You have John Rahm at 15%. So if you're somebody that thinks he has that nuclear round, right, that's 64 in him, right? As one of you guys said down there in chat before, then play John Rahm, right? You take him at 30%, you still have a lot of exposure to work with up top. You know, Rory McIlroy, guys like Xander, right, are all in play for Showdown. And rather than taking 60, maybe 70%, even 100%, right, Scotty Scheffler, you could take two of your favorite three, right, out of these the next three down. So that's what I prefer, right? I mean, if you're really going to take Scotty, like I said, just commit to him out there in your lineups. But because of the ownership angle, it's, at least to me, you have a better chance at hitting that optimal player if you go out there and take more of a buckshot approach. So even if you wanted to match the field, right, on somebody like a John Rahm, Rory, and Xander Schauffele, I would prefer that over going out there and locking somebody like Scotty. So that's my thought process. Somebody like Brooks is a player that I like out here just because of his tee time. Right? He's got an early tee time compared to some of the other players. Guys like Scotty, Rory, Xander Schauffele are all among the latest tee times of the day. So, you know, if you're looking at that weather edge, right, you're trying to avoid players that are going to, you know, be playing in the hardest conditions, then you probably want to avoid those sort of guys. So I think John Rahm, his tee time's a little bit earlier, so he's more doable than some of the other guys up here. But Brooks is among the first hour and a half of tee time. So if there is going to be that weather edge, he'll definitely be playing in those sort of conditions. Down here in the 9K range, we've got Wyndham Clark the whole way down here to Jordan Spieth. Joaquin Niemann is a little bit chalky, right? 16.5%, but it's not outrageous, right? I don't expect him to be 20% plus owned. I do think that guys like Hovland, right, are going to be a little bit more chalky now. And he went out there and showed us a little something after they're in round one, but nobody's outrageously chalky. So really where a little bit more of the ownership comes in are on guys like a Ludwig Aberg. Will Zalatoris is 16.9%. Down here, you know, 14, 13% down here. Nobody is that 25% that we had out there for the main slate. So really the only egregious piece of chalk, in my opinion, would be, you know, a Scotty out there at 30.7%. But don't make a habit of playing all these guys that are 17% owned. Your player pool out there for round two Showdown, especially if you're playing like 40, 50 lineups, should not be Scotty up top. You know, mix in, you know, one of these four guys. You'd probably do right out there with that kind of player pool. And then it shouldn't be Joaquin, Victor, Haberg, right, Zalatoris, Cam Young, Tony Finau, right, guys that all shot under par. If that's your player pool up top, you're just going to be donating money long term. Now, you might hit every once in a while. You might end up, shipping first place with a couple people, duplicating yourself out there. Even if you don't, right, you have all kinds of leverage issues, right? That game theory angle, all of that leverage you're trying to get in large field contests is going to be extremely hard to come by. So what I do, right, is I'll take a few pieces of chalk. So I wanted to point out Aberg as a player that I'm taking. I know we had somebody mention his stats from today. I guess I just want to, double check that. take a look at it, I'm not that worried about his shots gained from a singular round. So, some people might look at today's performance and go like, oh, it was unsustainable. It was also only an 18-hole sample size, right? Tomorrow, might go out there and just make it off the tee and approach play that's carrying his game. So today, yeah, he gained 2.77 strokes putting. He was a slight loser on approach and a slight loser around the green and gained like a stroke off the tee. That's totally fine, right? Like, I'm not expecting him to gain 2.77 strokes. So he's a player that I'm backing because of his birdie better upside, and he's got an early tee time, right? A lot of the other guys around him here do not have an early tee time. So our choices are pretty limited if we're going to try and find players to lean into that weather edge. And even if it's only a half a stroke or 0.7 strokes, like what we had for today, that matters, right? A 0.7 stroke difference is three and a half fantasy point difference, right, out there for every single player in that wave. So it adds up, right? You add on top of that Aberg is one of the best showdown players on the slate. And by best showdown player, I just mean in terms of average fantasy score, right? Ludwig Aberg is up there with these elite tier players. He's up there with those 10K options when it comes to his DK fantasy points per round, but he's only $8,900. So he's affordable, but he's that one piece of chalk that I'm indulging in. But outside of that, I'm trying to limit it, right? So sure, Cameron Young, a player that I'm taking, might have a little bit of ownership behind him, but I'm not going to take a Zalatoris as well on top of that. So again, you got to limit some of those chalky players that you're taking and try and lean into any weather edge that you can find. So Cameron Young at $8,600. He's a player that I'm taking who has a relatively early tee time. Still finishing up his round in the morning and then goes off there, I believe, right around like 9 local time. DJ, another guy with an early start. He's going to be even lower owned than some of the other options. So if you're starting with a chalkier start, let's say you're starting with maybe Rory, maybe your second man is Aberg, you're trying to correlate some off the tee power. That's another thing that I do out here for Showdown, right? It's not just game theory. It's not just weather. On top of that, I'll try and correlate skill sets. So maybe the par fives really favor power players out there for round 2. And you want that out there in your showdown lineup. So a lot of times that's what I'll do. I'll take a core of 4 or 5 power players and take them out there in a few lineups. So let's say we're starting Rory here, taking Ludwig as our second man in. It's pretty chalk. That's a pretty chalky start, right? 21%. That's 17% with the Ludwig Aberg down here at 17%. My third man in probably shouldn't be Cam Young, right? Cam Young would be a power player. He'd fit our weather edge. It would be fantastic to be able to play Cameron Young, but the ownership starts to get pretty sketchy. So if you're going to take a start, and take Cameron Young as your third man in, then you really have to worry about ownership. You really got to worry about leverage for your last 3 spots. I prefer DJ though, because DJ is another power player. He's also got the early tee time, right? So he checks the same 2 boxes that we're looking for. Maybe not playing as well, right, as Cam Young, right? 2 shots worse currently, but maybe he's that guy that wakes up tomorrow, right? Gets out to a better start, birdies a few holes, right? Gets under par, and then ends up carrying that momentum into round 2, right? That's possible, and he's half the ownership than what we have with Cam Young. So if we're going to start a little bit more chalky, right, that's where I prefer guys like a DJ. So if you can afford to take, a higher ownership guy, Cam Young's fine, right? Ludwig Aberg would be fine, right? If you have ownership pivots elsewhere, just a time and place for taking all these sort of players. So once again, I'll mention a few guys that I like here, but it's much less about the players that we're taking and much more about the process that we're getting to. Bryson is donkey chalk, as my boy DGen75 likes to say, just 20% owned, right? So ownership's through the roof right there. So if you could have guessed, right, if I'm not playing Scotty Scheffler, you bet my ass that I'm not playing Bryson DeChambeau. You can say the same thing about Max Homa. Max Homa actually is a really good tee time out there for Friday. So if you're going to take a chalky guy, like, I'd be okay with it, right? It's why I'm taking an Aberg with his decent tee time, but I don't love the 16%. And I do think it's single entries because he's so cheap. He's only $7,900 that Max Homa could be 30% owned out there in some of those higher dollar contests. So $50 to $100 plus out there for single entries. You're probably going to see Max Homa maybe even like 35% owned out there in some of those GPPs. He's by far this quote unquote safest play in this range. He fits that weather edge that, we're not the only ones that look at weather, right? Obviously, there's a lot of sharp communities out there. DGen75, myself, always preach about the weather every live stream that we do. But even the more casual live streams, right? People that maybe aren't as sweaty as a lot of us down here in the live chat are, won't look, you maybe didn't used to look at the weather, right? Maybe they were a little bit more casual about it. now even they look at the weather, right? Now it's even a big part of their process. So if that's going to be the case, right, guys like Max Homa in those, again, more nitty contests where people are going out there and playing a little bit more passive are going to be even higher rounds. So just know that if you're playing single entry, if you're playing the $100 single entry, just know that Max Homa is going to be extremely chalky. Down here in the 7Ks, you have guys like Matt Fitzpatrick that are popular. Tommy Fleetwood with his $7,700 price tag is going to be super chalky himself. So in those higher dollar contests, he might even be 30, 35% himself. Corey Connors going to be chalky there too. Same thing with Terrell Hadd and Patrick Reed. So unless you absolutely love one of these players, you should probably be fading them. So in the case of, I think, and let me actually just double check on the other tab so I don't have to think. We can just check, right, and see if I have them in my player pool. I don't think I'm playing any of those super chalky guys. So let me double check real quick. In terms of 7K guys, I have none of that chalk. And in terms of 8K chalk, I only have Aberg and Cam Young are the two highest owned players that I'm taking over there in the 8K range. So if I'm taking any high-end plays, they're all up there at the top end of the board. And then outside of that, I'm going completely contrarian. So honestly, if I wanted to play Scotty, I could 100% get away with it out there for my exposure. I'm just not going to do it though, right? I'll go out there. I'll take the chance that he doesn't have a nuclear round like he's going to have out there for round one. And again, just try and win with one of these other guys up top. So I'm going to play contrarian. I'm always more of a risk taker when it comes to my exposure. And that's not going to be different out there for this Friday. Down here in the 7K range, a few plays that I'll draw your attention to. So to give you an idea of the types of players I'm taking, Brian Harman obviously has been on fire with the iron play of late. $7,600 is more than a fair enough price tag. And because of the chalk around him, he's only 6% owned. So a good pivot off of some of the chalkier players like a Matt Fitzpatrick and Tommy Fleetwood. Sibu Kim's a play that I took as one of my core value plays this week, a player that I took in like 25% of my lineups. So obviously the tee to green stats were what I fell in love with. But after he's only +2 to the stage, he does have an early tee time to work with. I only have him at 6.1% ownership. So he's not chalky like he was for the main slate, has the tee time that we're looking for. And more importantly, was one of my favorite plays for a reason, right? That tee to green play, he's top 10 player in the field when it comes to shots gained tee to green. And over the last 12 rounds is the top 5 player in the field, which is form that you're not going to find down here in the 7K range. To round out our 7K plays, I also took a JT Poston at only 2.6%. So a player that just in general, I think is a better player than a lot of his peers. The form of late's been a little bit sketchy, but played decently today. Actually fell off a little bit late, was under par for a good amount of his round, ended at +2. So the ownership's not going to be there. And once again, is a player that on bent grass in particular. So this time of year, you're not going to see a lot of JT Poston, right? He's more of that bent grass specialist, that bent POA specialist that you see towards the middle to end of the year. He's a, excuse me, guys. He's a short game heavy player, right? He's a decent ball striker. He's gotten a lot better with the ball striking over the last year or so. But JT Poston is world class with the putter, right? I mean, he's maybe the best putter on any given week out there on tour. Denny McCarthy maybe has something to say about, right? Taylor Montgomery too, right? Also elite tier putters. But Poston needs to be on one of his better surfaces. And on bent grass, you can see he gains a third of a stroke per round, which is a lot better than what you've seen of late. This is why I think there's a lot of optimism for him at this golf tournament. Now, we go back to bent POA the week after this, so it's going to drop off rather quickly. But when we get to the 3, maybe 4 events from now, is really when I'm going to be hammering guys like JT Poston. So one thing that I'm huge on when it comes to my main slate analysis, I even include it for some of my showdown plays, is I try and lead into skill set, right? Guys that fit this sort of golf course. And you can see JT Poston, right? Only number 77 when it comes to recent form, but his long-term course fit, which is what I do over here in this course fit tab, he's number 55, which is a whole lot better because of the longer term stuff, right? He's a much better player long-term than what we've seen lately. And that's why I'll take a chance on him, right? After having a pretty so-so round to start here. Down here in the 6K range, there's not a ton of chalk. So I have some ownership coming in on guys like Benny Ann. They're at 8%. Nikolai Højgaard, I've got him at 9.5% after starting there with a -5 round. Eric Van Rooyen, I've got at 5.2%. Kurt Kitayama, 3.7%. Danny Willett, right, 4.2% ownership right there. But nobody's out of hand, right? I mean, your highest owned players, right? Højgaard, right, at 9.5%. Somebody like Benny at 8% is getting a little bit chalky there. But outside of those, handful of guys that we just mentioned, everyone else is reasonable ownership. So I guess you could say Taylor Moore at 7.4% is getting a little bit chalky there too, but it's pivot galore down here, right? If you take a shot on any of these guys, they're all going to make sense. So a few guys that I'm considering would be an Eric Cole, also a Bubba Watson. Eric Cole, first off, he fits this kind of golf course. So he's a little bit of a sprayer off the tee, but everything else is world-class for Eric Cole. And one thing you've seen from Masters champions, top fives, top tens at this event are guys that are maybe a little bit less off the tee heavy, end up having a lot of success. So I think that he fits this golf course, right? He's another one of those guys that long-term, right, really good on this bent grass surface. 0.4 shots better per round than what we're used to seeing from Eric Cole lately when it comes to the recent form. That means he's due for regression, right? If he's better on bent grass than what we've seen lately, well, there's a good chance that he's going to improve on that scoring average. So I like him there at $6,600. Bubba Watson, of course, a guy who's won this event twice, has elite tier course history. Actually looks pretty good out there, right? Played in the hardest conditions of the day, is only +1 at the stage, and is essentially unowned. So a guy that's starting with an early tee time. Same thing out there with Eric Cole, another one of those early starters that I'm taking out there in lineups, hoping that they get better conditions. And more importantly, they're lower owned, right? They're 2% owned a piece. They're essentially unowned out there in those large field GPPs. And by taking them, right, I can afford to take a little bit more chalk up there towards the top end of the board. So let me double check my showdown sheet. I think there's a couple semi-chalky guys. I don't want to really call them chalky guys down here in the 6K range. Then going out there and playing I'll just say it, Kurt Kitayama is a player that I'm taking. He's getting a little bit of ownership. Denny McCarthy, I guess we'll point him out. I thought I had him on here as a highlighted play, but I guess I forgot to do that. Denny McCarthy is a player that I really like out there for Friday Showdown. Now, the idea with Denny McCarthy is that he's coming in off a second place finish. Scorching hot form, right? Maybe didn't have his best Thursday performance, but now has that out of the way, right? Has moved on now from last week's heartbreak out there in that playoff lost, and is playing hell of a good golf. I mean, on this bent grass, gains 0.8 strokes per round, is even better than that putting baseline where he had literally one of the best putting performances in all of the PGA Tour last week, right? And that is, of course, included in the shots gained metrics. He's even better than that out there on bent grass. So I think a player that, once again, if you're looking at the course fit angle, really fits what we have here at the Masters. And he's still getting some ownership, right? Despite the +2 round. That's because of how he played out there at Valero. But at the same time, I don't think it's enough, right? He probably should be one of the chalkier guys like a Benny Ann. A Højgaard, if he shot something like even par or even -1, Denny McCarthy would probably be 12 to 15% owned. But because he's 2 over par, it's a much more reasonable ownership number. So I guess another player that I wanted to point out there to give you an idea of the types of players that I'm targeting. Outside of that, I'm going to open it up to player questions. I know I saw a few of them down there in chat there before. And then, of course, any strategy questions as well. So we're going to cycle into props here in a few minutes, talk about prize picks, underdog, all of that. But at least for the next 5-10 minutes, let's go through all of your questions when it comes to DFS. Let's see. I know we had a few things I wanted to circle back on, so let's do that first. Who is the one bounce back guy that I'm playing in a single entry? So in a single entry, a bounce back guy is going to be even lower owned than you'd expect. The guy that just kind of jumps off the board to me is Dustin Johnson, right? Obviously a winner at this event. When he doesn't win, a lot of times he's finishing in the top 15. He's only 7% owned. I think in higher dollar single entries, where a lot of people will be playing right out there for Friday, he's probably going to be closer to 5% ownership out there in a few of those contests. It's DJ for me. He's an absolute stud, and I think that a bounce back is very reasonable. Let's see. I want to make sure I'm not going past any of the questions that I promised we'd go through before. So let me circle back and make sure we're not doing that. Let's see. It looks like we're good. Okay. If you have any questions from before, just, I guess, go ahead and throw it back down in chat so I make sure I don't miss it. Where did we leave off? Let's see. Great round by Danny Willett. Absolutely. First time he's played competitive golf in 6 months. I didn't know it's been that long since he even played. Even more impressive now that I know that, Jack. So thanks for letting me know. And hell, that's insane. Not he shot -4 today. That's insane stuff. Max Homa looks focused. He does. And he was a lot more conservative today than he had been in the past at major championships, which I think bodes well for him going forward. Any golfers, first off, what's good, Luke? Doing well out here on this Thursday afternoon. Any golfers who scorecards didn't reflect how well they played? John Rahm is the one that I noticed today. I didn't get to watch everyone's play, but based on what I got to see on some of the coverage, John Rahm ball striked it a lot better than his scorecard. Who else? There's got to be at least one more. So let me think about this for a second. So John Rahm's probably the main one. Just going through these, yeah. No one else really like jumps off the board to me. I think Tiger Woods played worse than his scorecard indicates. So, right, so he's -1. And I promised that we'd talk about him here a little bit. I've got him at 7.5% ownership. That's in like the big GPP, right? So like the biggest contest that you're going to see on DraftKings. So that is what these ownership projections are catered towards. I've got him at 7.5%. I would not be surprised to see 10 to 15% in some of your higher dollar stuff. So yeah, I would probably avoid him out there. And I guess to give you like something on the other side, yeah, he's the one player that I think played out worse than their scorecard indicated. That lady who was mad focused on ownership definitely locked Hideki. Yeah, I remember seeing that yesterday. Yeah, remember that guy who was talking about ownership being overrated and that you should play Hideki, you should play Xander. Who else did they say? Who else was Donkey Chalk that just like absolutely sucked today? Yeah, they probably played all of them, huh? I wonder how that's going. I wonder why we don't see them down in chat today. It's crazy, right? Phil says, what do you think about Morikawa? I think that he's a low-owned pivot that you could take, but I'm worried about his form. So that's why I didn't play him for the main slate. But yeah, if you're looking for a low-owned pivot, let me see what I have him at. I got him at, 9.3% ownership? He fits that kind of role, right? Ludwig didn't even finish his round, did he? Not sure. Let me double check on that for you. He's only through 11 holes, so he has all that time left, right? So yeah, he's gained 2.7 strokes putting so far. Maybe he wakes up tomorrow and he's an absolute stud with the ball striking. So yeah, you're spot on with that. Yeah, he didn't finish his round. Good times. There you go. Not going to repeat it, but there you go. Happy for you, bud. Jake says, Kepka, Young, DJ, Aberg, Sibu were your core this week with Sanjay. Loving the player pool for tomorrow. Yeah, let's get it. I have a lot of those same guys too. And it's probably because you're in my Patreon and saw all of that. So good shit, man. Let's get it. Any love for Pavon? Played well, goes out early. I played him for main slate, so I'm staying away because I already have my exposure. But yeah, I think he's a good play overall this week. So I don't think you can go wrong there. The 12th killed Poston. Let me double check. I didn't see what happened to him. So, I tried to track as many golfers as possible, but let me see. What did he make, like a triple or something? He actually didn't finish his round. Oh, he hit in the water on 12. Wow, good. He triple bogeyed. Oof. Oh, I don't want to get a copyright strike from the Masters, so let's not do that. Do I know what Patrick Reed's greens are at? And look out for Akshay. I think he's at 8 or 9 greens right now, and he's still got like 3 holes left. So that one's close for that prop. Is content going forward going to be posted on Ship It for subscribers, or is it just a partnership and your content will remain on YouTube? My content's going to remain on YouTube and on my Patreon page. So the spreadsheet you guys see here is, of course, uncensored over there on my Patreon page. Is still going to be continuing going forward. So like I kind of mentioned before, it's a partnership. It's not a full-on merger that we're doing out here. So I'm still going to have my own thing that I'm doing over here on Patreon. Ship It's still going to be doing their own thing over there on the PGA side. It's more so for the Showdown content, right? Bringing you guys this strategy for every single slate. And then on top of that, starting to work more together collaboratively. So you're going to see a lot more of us working together, that sort of thing. And that's what it's going to look like going forward, at least for right now. That's what it is for right now. So yeah, it's still doing my own thing, still going to have my YouTube stuff up. It's still going to be posting all these spreadsheets for my Patreon members. Thoughts on Thigala? So I think he's a good play because of the tee time aspect, right? He's going to have an early tee time as somebody who's still finishing his round, and he's only +1. So it doesn't look that great on paper, right? You see +1, you go like, okay, that's a very average round. Well, first off, he's not done yet. He still has some scoreable holes left, and that's going to lower the ownership significantly. So I think he's a really solid play. You bet Tiger over 3.5 bogeys, and he just did Tiger-type stuff today. Honestly, the best Tiger you've seen in a while. I got to say, the scorecard, though, like his actual score is better than it should be. He was missing greens. He was getting into bad spots, like you were saying, right? So obviously you took his over on bogeys. You had to have noticed that today. It was getting out of it. That's unsustainable, right? I mean, like the guy is out of competitive play. He's going to be rusty. And trust me, guys, I'm like the biggest Tiger fan ever. It's going to come crashing down. And I think he's got to play like 23, 24 holes tomorrow. Does not feel like it's going to go well. Well, we'll see. Hopefully he proves me wrong. I hope he does. I think he's going to make the cut. I feel pretty confident about that. I'm not sure if he's going to keep it together under par, though. That's what I'm worried about, is maybe if he shoots something like 3 over par or something like that for round 2. Patty Reed, a little bit chalky mark, but I like his chances this week. Right? I took him for a top 5 bet. He's one of my core value plays this week. But yeah, I've got him at 14.3%. So doesn't fit the game theory angle. And he does have an early tee time, though. So, if you're willing to overlook that because of the weather edge, that's fine. So I think a pretty average play, all things considered, just because you have the high ownership combined with that weather edge. So what I want to do now is bring up DraftKings. We're going to talk through some game theory stuff. If you still have players you want my thoughts on, go ahead and let me know down in chat. But we're going to talk through some of the thought process when building lineups. So obviously we talked through some of the different ownership ranges, what to keep an eye on out there for Showdown. What I want to focus on now is what I'm doing when I'm hand building. So I'll build a lot of lineups on my optimizer. I'll set roles, which makes my life a lot easier. But for my higher dollar stuff, I don't trust my optimizer 24/7. I set rules, right? I'll kind of just mix and match different pools of players to go out there and build my sets of 6. In high dollar stuff, I'm playing, a $200 single entry, something like a $500, something like that, especially those head-to-heads for cash, where I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously. So when I'm building for, let's say, 1,000 entry single entry, maybe a 500 to 1,000 entry single entry, I'm going to take a pretty game theory based approach. So up top, I would not play Scotty in my single entry, right? Even if I loved him out there for round 2 Showdown, I would choose to take somebody else other than Scotty. In those contests, like I mentioned, especially the higher dollar that you go, the more nitty that people play. So in those contests, Scotty's going to be even higher owned. And in fact, I've seen in some of like the super high roller stuff, like $1,000 single entries, players like Scotty Scheffler being like 50 to 60% owned. I'm out there for a Showdown format. So an edge that I exploit are taking advantage of people that, again, lack testicular fortitude, right? They're not people that necessarily play with the boldness that they need for their GPP lineups. So if I was playing in a higher dollar single entry out there for tomorrow, my favorite starting man's probably Brooks. Early starter, low ownership, might even be sub 10% out there in the higher dollar stuff. My second man in, I would highly consider taking a pivot here too. So obviously Aberg, right? A player I'm taking in some GPP lineups. But out there for this format, I might try and be a little bit more different about it. So Spieth does not have the greatest tee time for tomorrow. It has a little bit of a later tee time, which is going to work against him a little bit. Actually, let me double check on that. I might be capping out here. Let's fact check ourselves. Let's not be giving out any fake information here. So where you at, Spieth? So yeah, it looks like he's got a 10:42 tee time, early enough for me. So I was wrong about that. So yeah, he has the tee time that we're looking for. In Jordan Spieth, I only have it a 9.3% projected ownership. So obviously, if you're taking him as your second man in, you're going to have 2 pivots up there towards the top. So down here in the 8K range, if I wanted to take a Chalky or Bryson, I could, but I have no interest out there, right? Again, I go extremely contrarian when I'm building my Showdown lineups. So I could throw a DJ into that lineup up here towards the top end of the 7s. If I wanted to take a chalkier player, I could. But once again, right, I prefer guys like Sahith who have that weather edge and are also coming in with lower ownership. Down here in the 7s, last 2 guys, right, pick your favorite 2. Right down here in the 7s, you can be a little bit more aggressive about it, right? You could spend up with one of your last 2 spots, right? Maybe go up here and throw in a Cam Young right out there in the lineup, and then spend down into the 6K range. So I think because we have these pivots, right, you could take that double 7K approach, and you'd be more than different enough. But if you were a little bit chalkier with your first 4 players, then that's when taking somebody like a Cam Young up here, like we did, would be helpful because Cam Young's not going to get us different. But going down to $6,300 is for sure going to get us different, right? You're going to be taking somebody who's sub 3% owned because everyone down there is low owned, right? At the bottom end of the 6s. And on top of that, it's going to differentiate our lineup construction, right? By forcing ourselves to an ugly play at the bottom end of the board, it changes up where our salary is being spent, right? We have what is this? 1, 2, 8K players, right? We have 2 9K players, right? 4 spend ups out there in our lineup. And we're being a lot more aggressive about it, right? Even our 7K guy, right, is $7,900. Now you could soften it up a little bit, right? You could go down here and you take your favorite 7K guy, right? Maybe it is Siwoo Kim, right, at $7,400. That puts you at 6,800 remaining. But even that, right, if you're avoiding the Benny Ann who's chalky, if you're avoiding, Højgaard, right, who's really chalky himself at $6,700, anyone else down here, you're still getting a lot of leverage out there to the field. So it's not always exactly who you're playing for Showdown. That matters, right? Taking ownership pivots, taking game theory is a huge way to generate an edge out there for round 2 Showdown, but it's also about how you're putting them together. So I can't stress it enough. If you're only entering like 20 lineups, I would just hand build them all. I think it's a lot easier. It's a lot more effective out there for 20 lineups. If you're entering 50 like myself, right, your GPP lineups, you might have to use on an optimizer, right? I don't have the patience or the time, right, to sit here all night and build 50 lineups by hand, especially because I put a lot of thought into my hand-built lineups. But for the lineups I'm spending real money on, right, I'll enter $5, $15 GPP lineups pretty freely all the time, right? But if I'm putting $100 plus on a single lineup, I'm going to have to be building that by hand. So that's how I handle it. That's how I look at a lot of my GPP exposure. If I was playing cash, I'd be okay taking Scotty out there in a cash format. I think in a cash format, I'd really be trying to take guys down here in the 8K range. So I think there's a good argument to be made to playing a balanced build if you're going out there and playing cash. A few of my favorite targets for that, Cam Young. I like the way that he's ball striking it, so I like that for cash. You could throw in a Tony Finau. He's playing pretty decently to this point. Max Home at $7,900 is a must play if you're playing cash, in my opinion. Tommy Fleetwood, I think you could say the same thing about based on how he's playing. This is how I would be starting my sort of cash lineup. So even with the 8,700 remaining, right, you get a 4 to spend up. So if you wanted to go out there and throw, I don't know, Rory would probably be a little bit too much. You can still make it work, right? $6,700. But if you went down here and threw in, Neiman, or maybe it's a Brooks, right, for your real spend up there in the 9K range, $7,500 remaining is really easy to do out there for cash. So I like more of a balanced build out there for the cash side. And I'm not a huge cash player myself. So if you have questions there, I'll try to answer them if I can. But I'm much more of a GPP player than what you get there on the cash side. So that's why I focus on it for a lot of my content. And that's what I've got when it comes to lineup construction. If you have any questions, I'll go over them here, then we're going to talk props. So T Swenny, my boy Travis, is ready to talk props. So obviously, we'll get to that here in a second. Looks like the live underdog strokes are decent. I'm liking the sound of that, especially if you have live odds to compare with. You feel like Hideki is going to come in under-owned. You're 100% right. I have Hideki at 9.7%. And honestly, I think in like the single entries, your higher dollar stuff, you're going to get him at even lower ownership. Any good head-to-head matchups that I like? Yeah, Sam. So we'll take a look at the Hard Rock board. Remind me when we're talking about props. So give me a reminder here in like 10, 15 minutes. And I've got you on that because I do want to cover props in detail before. But we'll look at the head-to-head board. I just want to give it a good amount of time, right, if we're going to go through those. You had Lamprecht, the Amateur, and some lineups. Well, that's a sharp take. I definitely didn't have any myself. But that's a really good find by you. That's awesome. And he's doing great early and ended up 2 over. It's that kind of course. You're just hoping that he makes the cut. He's in position to do it. So I think that's a sharp take, and he made it a lot of birdies. And then you faded Hideki based on how he blew up Sunday at Valero. And it looks like he followed that up. Yeah. I faded him, so I'm kind of happy to see it. But we're not out of it yet. Right? He's still got to miss the cut before we can victory lap that one. Alrighty, so hopefully you can see this. I know it's a little bit small on here, but when I'm sharing my screen for files, apparently I can't zoom in on this. So this is the stat averages from round 1 based on current numbers. So the birdies and bogeys per round are just based on averages per hole. So obviously there's guys that haven't finished their round, right? I'm not using their partial stats here included. It's just based on the holes already played. So these are accurate averages of how the course is playing. Now, some of the last holes, again, like 14 through 18, have like 5 or 6 data points that need to be added. But this is a real good idea of what we're going to see out there for Friday. Just to remind you guys, the course conditions are going to be windy out there for tomorrow's action. Looks like similar wind conditions to what we saw for today. And though we don't have pin locations, or at least let me double check on that. The didn't have pin locations by the time I went live. If we have them now, we can take a look at them. But without them, we can just do some assumptions, right? Kind of assume what we're going to see out there. Yeah, it doesn't look like we ended up getting those pin locations. I think it's safe to assume that we see maybe slightly harder conditions than what I have on here. So stroke average, like I mentioned before, I think might be between 1.5 over par. Birdie average maybe be between like 3 to 3.25 per round. Bogey average might be closer to 4 per round. Green average maybe slightly lower. You get the idea, right? Green average maybe closer to like 10.5. Fairway average maybe closer to 10 out there for the field, as the course is going to firm up a little bit as they run the sub-airs overnight, just as the course has that evaporation happen. And pin locations today were pretty favorable, right? Like 16 was a super easy pin location. A lot of the par fives were in accessible spots. So if we're going to see any movement with the golf course, at least until we see pin locations, I'm going to assume that it's set up a little bit harder. So when we're using these, we can take a look at them, use them not as gospel right out there for round 2, but as pretty good barometers of what we can expect for tomorrow's action. So we have a prize picks board up. We're going to start with Underdog before we hop into prize picks. So let me refresh this. The Underdog UI, by the way, is extremely slow. When I refresh this, it's not even my internet that's screwing up right here. It's going to take it like 30 seconds to a minute just to load. So, okay, those are the live lines that you were talking about before. Let's see. We have a question about Lowry. I think that he's a pretty average play overall. I think because he's only even par right now, that he's not going to be chalky, but he's also not playing that well. So, I'm not against it. I'll say that much. It's safe to say that some of the same players who did well today will possibly be good tomorrow. For sure. Yes, with great ball control. That's always the case, Mel. I have to say, though, their hit rates are not much different than where I'd model them otherwise, right? So just because they played well round 1 might give them a 1, maybe 1.5% higher optimal rate. But the guys that played maybe poorly round 1, it's not that much of an impact in the negative direction. So the reason why people like myself, other people in the industry, right, talk about ownership game theory so much is because the public, right, people when they're playing their lineups, doing all of that, weigh that aspect way more than they should, right? So for example, so I'm over here on my projections tab right now, right? You have somebody like Brooks at 11% ownership, right? You have somebody like Rory at 22% ownership. Now, do you think Brooks has half the optimal rate as somebody as like Rory McIlroy? The answer is obviously no, right? Especially in a major championship, right? Brooks has probably pretty similar optimal rate, right, to somebody like Rory McIlroy. He's half the ownership just because Rory looked a little bit better today, right? And maybe a better example would be somebody like Hideki, right, who somebody mentioned for a little bit of a bounce back before, right? He's 9.7% compared to Aberg at 17.1%. Like, you can't tell me that Hideki has half the chance as somebody like Aberg to succeed. So I agree with you in general, right? The guys that played well today, I do think have a slightly better chance to succeed. It's just that in DFS, that's really where we talk about ownership, right? Talking about maybe avoiding the guys that played well. In that aspect particular, and especially for large field GBPs, that's where that comes into play. So that's what I'll say about that. My cat is yapping in the next room over. So sorry if you guys can hear that, but she's being mighty fun and annoying right now. So let's take a look at some of the live lines. So we've got a 70.5 for Patrick Reed. I'm going to have to double check on their current scores to make sure we're looking at the right thing. But he is currently -2 and at a 70.5 line. So if he holds on to -2, would end up going for an under. Sun Jam is currently +3, but he's also on a par 5 in the fairway. And it's a reachable par 5. So that actually might be a look for an under, right? He's at that same number. He's even money. So I'm going to throw that in. Cam Young is currently -1, if memory serves me correctly. Let's see. Yeah, Cam Young's currently -1. And where is he at on 15? All right, so just finished up 14. Has not teed off 15 quite yet. Maybe not a prop that I'm going to take, but we'll at least consider it. Where is Homa? I know Homa missed his birdie putt out there on 13. That's where he ended up leaving off. And what is he, -4 at this stage? Yeah, so Homa's at -4. So if he were to shoot even par from here out, that would be 68 strokes. I don't know if that's the worst play. I think early on it's going to be pretty easy conditions. So I'm at least going to throw it in the shopping cart. I'm not sure if we're going to consider taking it. Guys like Burns are at his number right now. See, Brooks, what is Brooks right now? Brooks at even par, right? Out there at this stage. Let's see. Brooks is, even par through 11. He's on 12, which is pretty easy hole, but I don't think he teed off and he has 2 feet for par. That's another one that we can consider taking, especially because, again, conditions are going to be, I think, a little bit easier in the morning. Jordan Spieth is +2, but he does have a few easy holes left. Ugh. I feel like, you could take some unders here, but I don't know if they're insane value. So what I want to do here is see if DraftKings has odds posted. So let me bring that up, and then I'll reshare my screen, and we can take a look together. But what I like to do for props, guys, obviously I do a lot of projections. I calculate averages from the day before. But then I like to take a look at the sportsbook odds, because obviously they have massive casinos, massive hotels for a reason, because they make a lot of money off consumers, and they have a good way of pricing these slates. So this is the round 2 stuff. This isn't the stuff to finish round 1. So I was kind of hoping that they would have the round 1 stuff posted. Let's see, are they at the bottom? No. Okay, so they don't have those that we can reference. A lot of times they will keep stuff up for live guys on DraftKings. So we don't have that to compare to. Oh, do I really want to bet any of these? Like the Brooks one, maybe. Like I feel like Brooks is going to wake up and play a lot better. There's a little bit of speculation there, though, so maybe we throw that one out. The Max Homa to shoot even par, like that feels pretty reasonable. Let's make sure he's on 14T. That one seems like a pretty solid prop. The Sun JM one, I mean, he should probably be at 74.5 because he is on a par 5, a reachable par 5 and in the fairway. But based on how he played in round 1, I don't know if I'm going to trust that. So these live props, they have them posted on Underdog. I think that there's some unders that I would lean on, but nothing that I want to enter for right now. So good idea to take a look at those, right? You can see if you want to add any exposure. I still have a lot of props, a lot of slips left live. So I don't know if I need to get any exposure for that, but it was good to look through them at the very least. What do we want to focus on here? The props for round 2. So once again, I think these stat averages are going to be very helpful out there for Friday. In trying to figure out some value here, let me just circle through these because this is the first time I'm seeing these. These were not posted before we started the live stream. So this is truly my first look right out there at this prop board. So they had some prize pick stuff up. So I was able to take a look at that, but not over here at Underdog. So Cantlay is at even par. They have Midwoo 1 over. JT even par. Let me take a look at the prize picks board. So I'll have that up on another tab. I just want to do some comparisons. So a lot of the strokes are the same. So JT Cantlay are even par on both sites. It looks like very consistent pricing over there from Underdog to prize picks. So let me see what they have like Cam Young at, just for curiosity. Oh, shit. Let's make our life easier. Just look it up. Oh, they don't have him up, right? Because he hasn't finished his round 1, I guess. That's unfortunate. So a lot of the guys that haven't finished their round, I guess they're just not posting props for until they go out there and actually finish their action. So the guys that they have posted up here are almost all later tee times. So that's something that I didn't notice before when we were going through this. Or that, look at this, right? These are the guys that are teeing off super late, right? Scotty Scheffler's like the second to last group. You have guys like Wyndham Clark, Hovland that are truly the last group off. These guys don't have great conditions. So yeah, those live props like might be some of my favorites just because they're playing in the better conditions. So I guess I'll say this much. That Homa at 68.5, I really like for an under because he has to shoot even par to hit on the way out. I don't mind that one at all. I also don't mind the Sunjay M prop because he's still in contention to make the cut, right? He's still going to be trying out there tomorrow morning. He has tonight to reset, right? Maybe he wakes up and has better form than what he had for today. And then he's on that par 5, reachable par 5 and 2. So I like that. I think there's some push equity out there at 75. I don't hate this for our initial lean, but what I'm going to do now is look over there on prize picks because they have guys up there for the morning wave. And if I'm going to see any sort of weather edge, I not only, right, do I try and take that out there for Showdown, right, try and take advantage of that. I try and do that for my prop stuff too. So let's try and find some morning wave players. Like, look at this. They have Brooks Koepka props that we can actually take. Like, I think that he's a solid option. Same thing with, Jordan Spieth, right? These guys that had kind of shaky rounds, they're going to have better conditions. They're going to have to be aggressive starting from further behind. And if pin locations aren't brutal, I'm totally fine taking these guys over 3.5. So I'm going to throw those guys in the shopping cart for right now. Even guys at 3 that probably shouldn't be down here at 3 that I'm liking as well. Yeah, Prize Picks looks a little bit more playable than what we have over there in Underdog right now. So let me check on something real quick. So we looked at the DraftKings side. I'll actually still leave DraftKings up. I want to see if FanDuel has any birdie props up. So DraftKings posts a lot of stroke stuff. If you're looking at the plus EV analysis, trying to compare to like where the sports books are pricing stuff, FanDuel not only posts a round score, so strokes like you have on DraftKings, but they also post birdie stuff. So let me see. So they have the stroke stuff up over here on FanDuel. That's to be expected. Do they have birdies up? So whole scores, sometimes they hide them under here. Let's see, are they down here? Yes, so they have the... No, they don't. I lied. Holy shit, they have so many live props. Sometimes they hide them at the bottom of this list, so I just want to see if they're doing that. Yeah, doesn't look like they have them up quite yet, but later on, when we circle back on this, we might have those to compare to. But even without those, right, the birdie average today was 3.24 per round. I think it might be slightly harder. I think it'll be between 3, maybe 3.5 per round, at most 3.5. That would be if we got super easy pin locations. But what I really like about these two in particular is, first off, Jordan Spieth averages like 4.5 birdies per round around Augusta. So obviously, course history angle fits really well there. I have the wrong tab up. I want to be showing Prize Picks. My apologies. I'm a slapdick and was doing that incorrectly. But look at this, like, right, Brooks Koepka at 3.5, Jordan Spieth at 3.5 birdies. Jordan Spieth has that track record I was talking about. Brooks Koepka is just a baller in major championships, right? So if the average is going to be 3 birdies per round, a player that's raising his level, right, somebody like Brooks, is going to average at least a birdie higher than that. So these are the two leans that I'd lean on right now, right? We went over those 2 live props over there in Underdog, but Brooks, Jordan Spieth at 3.5, they're going to have the best conditions of the day. And on top of that, and it's not going to be great conditions, right? So I say the best conditions of the day, still going to be pretty hard, all things being considered, but they're going to have a better chance than the PM guys to go over. And considering their track record and just their pedigree of play, are guys that I would consider for an over there. So let's see. Any questions when it comes to props? Yeah, great point about the ownership. Yeah, it's tough to weigh that, right? Because you want to play the guys that have the best chance, but you don't want to go overboard on it. How do I feel about doing DJ and Ludwig for round 1? So for the round 1 scoring, so let me take a look at where the Underdog has them. 1 second. I'm on the other tab, obviously, taking a look at that. What is Aberg at? Aberg's at 70, isn't he? Yeah, he's currently -2, so he's at that number. Let me see where he's at on the golf course. I think he's on, what, hole 12? Not sure if he's teed off. Oh, don't ban me, Masters, for playing something in the background. So yeah, he still has to tee off 12. Kind of like Sanjay. I like that because of the push equity there. So yeah, I think that's a pretty decent one. The finishing stretch of this golf course, at least round 1, was not set up that difficult. A lot of because of the pins on the par 5s and the setup on hole 16. 16 is a very favorable pin location. And who was the other one? Let me circle back. It was DJ, right? What is DJ at? He's at 73.5. So that's 1.5 over par. And isn't he only 1 over? Ooh, that's a fire take. If so, yeah, he is only at 1 over par at this point. Oh boy. Yeah. So in fact, let's circle back to Underdog. I want to go ahead and throw the DJ one back in there for sure. The Ludwig prop I feel pretty decent about. So if you want to make it another 2-man, I think you could take this Ludwig or this DJ one. But if you wanted to make the other one a 3-man, right, and take out Ludwig and maybe just take, who was it? The 2 guys that we took, right? Brooks. Sorry, it was Homa and Sanjay. It wasn't Brooks. These 2 would make it a 3-man. Maybe you do want to make it 2 2-mans, right? Take Max Homa, Sanjay, and then take Dustin with Brooks. So I don't hate the Brooks play, right? I was mentioning that one before too. I think all these are pretty live. The main reason for that, just to circle back on the scoring averages, If we take a look at the back nine here, right? 13's playing like 0.4 under par, 15's a par five. A lot of your elite tier players are going to be able to birdie that. 16, you can see it's playing slightly over par, but that's all because of these double bogeys, right? There's still a 22% birdie rate there. Of these like last 5-6 holes, to me, the scoring average in the morning is going to be at worst like even par, right? Because we have to consider the wind gusts are going to be lower earlier, right? When these guys are finishing the round, I think they're going to be playing in better conditions than what they had this afternoon. More receptive greens because they're going to be watering the course overnight. On top of that, right, you have lack of wind. They're out there for the first hour, hour and a half. The scoring average for these last few holes, I say like at worst even par. There's a good chance that it plays like a quarter of a stroke under par out there for those last 5 holes. So yeah, to have somebody like DJ, right? If he shoots even par, he'd hit out there for his last 5 holes. To have somebody like Sanjay, even somebody like Brooks that has to just shoot 1 under par to go out there and hit is, I think, pretty solid value. So really good call out there, pointing out those 2 props, and I agree with it. It's so unpredictable at this point due to all the weather factors and players still having holes remaining. Not really. Round 2 is still starting on time. So sure, you might have that like fatigue factor for the older players, but it's actually a little bit more straightforward than you think, at least for me, right? And again, I'm saying that as an expert that does this every week, right? And that does content for golf. So obviously for me, right, it's probably going to seem a little bit more simple, but I think you're probably overcomplicating it a bit. The weather edge, some of your early starters, I think you're going to get the better side of it. And then the round is still starting on time, right? So the guys, they're going to finish their round and then immediately go back out. So not going to be a delay. You like the bogeys or worse stuff. So yeah, I'll take a look at those. I can take a look at like the 3.5. Yeah, not unpredictable. Only Scotty can ruin Bryson bets. So you're talking about the outright betting side. Yeah, golf in general is unpredictable. That's for true. That's completely true. But I'm not sure if this slate is from the weather side. You're surprised by how few birdies Koepka had today. Yeah, but he only had like 1 so far. That's for sure. You have been interacting with DGen. Yep. Jason, I was talking about prop bets that are difficult to predict. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he wasn't talking about outrights. But hey, he's not wrong though, right? Only Scotty can win this week, right? Only Scotty. He's the chosen one. He's Jesus reincarnated, right? Walking around playing this week. There's no chance that he can lose. What's going on, Jacob? Hopefully you're having a solid start here. Let's go back to Prize Picks. So I already mentioned like what 2 slips over here in Underdog. Let's find at least 1 more slip over here in Prize Picks. Why is Bryson only 72 strokes? It's a good question, huh? I didn't notice that. So yeah, I still want to go through some of the stuff here in Prize Picks. So we haven't done our due diligence here. I still do like Brooks over and also the Jordan Spieth over. But let's see what else we can work with. So they have Bryson at 72, like you were saying. Guys like Cam Young at 72.5. Like, I know it's going to play pretty difficult tomorrow, but the elite tier players, the elite tier scoring average, I have it like even par or better. So something I do a lot of times when I'm doing my projections is I'll find the field average, right, which I think is going to be like 1 to 1.5 over par. But then I'll also do the scoring average for the top 25, 30 players in the field. That's usually like the top 25th percentile after the cut line. If you take those sort of performance and those players, right, your top 25% in any given field normally gain like a stroke and a half to the field, right? So if I think that the field average out here is going to be something like 1.5 over par, that means that your top 25% players, your elite tier guys that you're getting on Prize Picks Underdog, because you guys have to remember, right, the players that they're posting on Prize Picks and Underdog are, for the most part, right, not in all cases, but for the most part, your best players in the field. They're going to project better than that field average on average, right? So the average for these guys, right, is going to be better than what you see for the rest of the field. In most cases, it's usually like a stroke difference. So if I think the stroke average is going to be like a half a stroke over par, it's like, do I think Cameron Young is going to have a good day for these elite tier guys? Like, I think you could say that, right, with his early tee time. Like, I don't think that's a bad lean at all. And that's how I do a lot of this analysis. So prop stuff's not rocket science. It's about making sure that you have a good baseline of data from the day before, right? Having all of the averages from the prior's round action and then adjusting for it with each player, right? So for example, Cam Young is a high birdie percentage player, right? Does make a lot of bogeys, but is a really high birdie percentage guy. So, if the birdie average for the field, it's like 3.25, like it is for today, he's going to project closer to 4, right? Like, now obviously you have to fine tune that. You have to get it to a more exact science, but that's the idea. So let's keep Cameron Young in there, and let's see what else we can find. So again, I'm trying to make sure I'm taking guys that are hitting the ball well. Cam Young is at like 70% green in regulation right now. So obviously hitting the ball really well in approach. And I want the morning tee times, right? So just like with our showdown stuff, I don't want to be taking guys that are teeing off in the hardest conditions. So I'm not going to double up on a Jordan Spieth. I'm not going to double up on taking somebody like a Brooks Koepka. I'm going to try and spread out my exposure. That's also something to warn against, right? Is getting too much exposure to any given player. Guys like Rory, John Rahm at 71 strokes. If they were in the AM wave, I'd probably be looking at their under, but they are playing in some of the harder conditions. Same thing with Xander at 71.5. I just don't love the fact that he's teeing off at 148. So ideally, I'd like to find somebody that's teeing off closer to like 10 a.m. So, Cam Young fits that, but let's try and find somebody to pair him with. So Haddon could be a guy, but I don't love the course fit. He has played pretty poorly here over his last few starts. Cam Young is definitely the one that stands out to me. That's what I can say so far. I don't hate this Adam Scott prop. They're at 73 strokes, but I do kind of wish that he was a player that I felt better about when it comes to the form. He's not in bad form by any means, or he's gaining strokes to the field, but this is a major championship sort of field. You could say Max Homa, but he's at 72 strokes. I wish he was 72.5. Then I'd be a little bit more willing to get there. Who else do we have? We have DJ at 72.5. Really, it's between these three. I'm going to try and pick two of them to make a two-man. I'm between these three at this stage. Let's go through this one last time. Yeah, it's between these three. Honestly, I'm probably just going to take these two guys at 72.5. Obviously, the 73 projection for Adam Scott, it's kind of nice to have that push at 73. But the push rolls over here on Prize Picks are not as favorable as what you have on Underdog. In fact, they're actually negatively impacting the player over here on Prize Picks. When you go out there and have a push, it lowers your payout more than it probably should. So over here on this side, right, I kind of like to avoid those even ones sometimes. So in the past, by the way, when you would have guys push, it would actually reset your payout. So what you could do is you could take a bunch of guys at an even projection, so like 72 strokes, 74 strokes, 71, etc. And when you would have any one of like, if you did a 5-man power play or 5-man flex play, it has to be flex, right? If you're doing a 5-man slip on Prize Picks, if you would have one of those 5 push or even a 6-man flex, right? If you had one of those guys push, you could go from having like a 10x 6-man to paying on a 10-man 5-man because it would take your payout structure and remove all of the correlation from it. Well, they took that away. And now if you have a 2-man slip hit in the past, you would get 1.5x payout if you had one hit and one push. Now, if you have one hit and one push, you get a 1.18x payout. It's absolutely trash. It's not even worth your time out there for entering. So the Adam Scott prop, like if this was Underdog, I'd probably want to take him there at 73. But over here on Prize Picks, it's almost useless to go out there and go after any of those pushes. So I would take these two unders, and the payout's not ideal right out there at 2.75x. But again, two spots that I think are some value with some earlier tee times. I was looking at this green regulation board before. Some of these guys look a little bit high considering the wins that we're going to get. So just to point out a few in particular, like Victor Hovland has not been hitting the ball very well of late. Now, he looked a lot better round one, but he could be a potential fade when it comes to that category. Bryson DeChambeau is not known for hitting greens regulation. So though he does have a middle of the day tee time, could be worth a look out there from the fade standpoint. Fairways, the average was just over 10 today. So just like we were taking a look at guys at like 3.5 birdies when the average was 3 for the field, right? If the average was about 10 fairways for the field, an elite tier fairway hitter, right, should not be 0.5 higher than the field, right? Like a guy like Corey Connors that is known for hitting fairways should not only be 0.5 higher than what we had for the field average. So I'm going to take Corey Connors there, and I'm going to try and find combinations. So we could take him over and then maybe one of these unders. So obviously I mentioned the Fitz one before. Let me see what his green and regulation looked like today. I know he played well, obviously, right? Shot under par. So did he end up over par? Fitzy? Hopefully not. That'd be a drastic turnaround for him. So yeah, he ended up there at -1. It's going to take a second to load up. The Masters app, it's great, but it is taking a little bit to load. Let me see what we have for his greens regulation today. Come on now. We don't have all day to wait on this. And it does the same thing on the mobile app too. Yeah, it takes like 20 seconds to get all the stats to load. So he went 10 of 18 on greens today. And that was him actually playing pretty well. So yeah, I do like that under there at 11.5. So yeah, this is another slip that I'd recommend entering out there for round 2. Again, Corey Connors, right, just has to gain one fairway to the field to go out there and hit. And that's something that he does routinely out there in the PGA Tour. And Matt Fitzpatrick, he's not known as a green regulation guy, right? Even when he's playing well, he's like an average guy at best for hitting greens. Pretty stout short game, very aggressive player. And today, right, still shot under par, still had a pretty good round, all things considered. Only hit 10 out of his 18 greens. Out there tomorrow is playing in the latter half of tee times. So the tee time's not ideal for Corey, but fairway percentage, a little bit less impacted by wind than what you have with the green percentage. Green regulation percentage is highly variant based on the weather conditions that you're playing in. So the fact that he has a later tee time makes me think that you could see a lower average there for Matty Fitz. So that's another slip taken over there, right? That's 3 slips now over here in Prize Picks and 2 in Underdog. So we're probably good there. Probably going to cut it off on the prop side right there. But some Hard Rock stuff I want to go through. And then, of course, any questions that you may have down there in chat. So let me bring up Hard Rock real quick. And we'll do that. Because I know we had Sam asking about that before. And I want to make sure we go through all the stuff. Not just Prize Picks, Underdog, but we'll take a look at Hard Rock too. So I know Hard Rock, they only had the stuff posted for groups that have already finished. So they don't have the entire board posted. So maybe they changed that by the last time that we were here. But it was on other futures. And yeah, they have the 3 balls posted for all the guys that already finished. So just looking at specials, they have a top live golfer prop. That's kind of funny. Matchups, they have 18-hole match bets posted. So, and I think this includes a few guys that haven't finished round 1. Let me see. Now, it looks like all these guys finished their round 1. So, yeah, kind of like what we have here for the 3 balls. We're not going to have everything posted because of the tee time situation. So, yeah, we'll take a look through these, though, Sam. Definitely not our full selection to choose from, but we have a few to go through. Where are we at? They have birdie odds up? Oh, shit. That's a first for them. They never do that. Oh, look at that. So this isn't, oh, it is birdies are better too. I was going to say, oh, it's total birdies, but it's birdies are better, like you said there. Huh. I would love to take a look at these. So my guess is that Brooks is probably like even money if they have him up. And then Jordan's probably like slightly juiced over. Oh, they don't have them up. So neither one's posted over here on the DraftKings one. But it is good to see these as comparison. Where like Joaquin Niemann is minus 175 over 3.5. Hideki, right? Hideki did not have a good round. Hideki also, I believe, has a later tee time. Let me double check on that. Again, I don't want to be giving you guys incorrect information. Yeah, like he has a 1:20 p.m. tee time, right? So it's a PM tee time. Over here on DraftKings, he's minus 155 over, right? So for somebody like Brooks and Jordan Spieth, you got to think that they're better than that because they're playing earlier and they had better rounds than Hideki did today. So let's see. They have Cantley at minus 150. Even Matty Fitz is minus 135 towards the over. JT's minus 135. So they're at the very least leaning over on pretty much all these guys at 3.5 birdies. So obviously some of them have more juice than the others. They even have guys up there at 4.5 birdies, albeit juice towards the under, right? On guys like a Rory, a Scotty Scheffler, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for letting me know that. That's honestly the first time that I've ever seen them do that. And it's mad clutch because, right, normally they do post that over here on FanDuel, but we did not get that this time. Just because I remembered, I'm going to go ahead and remind you guys about the Ship It partnership that we're doing over here on the channel. Make sure you guys check them out if you haven't already. I know a lot of you down in live chat are already part of the Ship It Nation, but they're a new sponsor, a new partner with the channel over here, and going to be doing a lot of talk about Ship It Nation. So tomorrow there's a big UFC slate. We're going to talk a little bit about UFC right here at the end of the live stream. And we're going to go through a few of their top end plays. I'm not going to be able to show you guys the projections, but I'm going to tell you guys a few guys that are popping over there. I'm out of maybe their top 5. I'll give you guys like 1 or 2 of them that I would keep an eye on for tomorrow. And more importantly, this is going to be something that we're talking about quite a bit going forward. So collaboration going on with Ship It Nation. They're an awesome site. Again, they have a lot of people that are winning GPPs consistently, providing content over there, which is the main thing that I'm looking for in a tout site, right? Like if I'm going to be listening to somebody, taking their advice regardless of the sport, they better have results to show for it, right? Like just like myself, right? I try to show you guys results that I have for any given slate. I try to show you guys when I win big, not just to toot my own horn and whatnot, but to show you guys, right, that these projections work, right? This process, right, actually breeds results. So that's what I love about Ship It Nation is you're getting analysis from people that are going out there and making this an extremely profitable venture, and that's what I like about partnering with them, right? They're the best. They're regardless of sport. Again, they're not just doing golf stuff. They have NFL, NBA, MMA, NHL, MLB, NASCAR, and college football on there. So make sure to check it out. But let's circle back on Hard Rock bets. So talking through a few of these 3-ball bets. 3-balls are always tough for me because I don't bet them that much. Out of this threesome right there, though, like my favorites for these 3-balls are always going after the long shot, right? Like I'll never bet somebody like Rom at minus odds. That's just not my style out there unless you're going against two complete, nobodies right out there for your other two spots. Let me see if we can find maybe like a plus 200 or plus 300 long shot for one of these 3-ball bets. So JT Zalatoris at plus 195. Hideki played horribly round one, right? Zalatoris and JT played a little bit better. I wouldn't mind either of these out there for a little bit of a dart throw. So obviously I wouldn't bet both of them, right? I would pick your favorite out of a Zalatoris or a JT, but at plus 195 odds, these are the types of guys that I'd be looking at out there for a 3-ball. Let's see. I wouldn't take Ricky. Minwoo's hurt, so I probably wouldn't take him. Don't love the odds on that group. Don't love the odds there. Mickelson at plus 275. I don't love it, but I would lean on him if anything out there for that 3-ball. Probably stay away from those two groups. Lamprecht group, probably a stay away. This Bryson group, definitely a stay away. And the last two here, you got the Taylor Moore, LaFuente, and Olazabal, and then Eckroat, Jaeger, Willett. Yeah. Honestly, my favorites out of all of these, my favorite by far is either taking JT or Zalatoris. I think that's a pretty sharp one to take there. And then I guess if anything, right, like maybe Mickelson out there at plus 275. But until we get the entire board, right, this is only like a third of the board when it comes to the 3-balls. It's going to be kind of tough to say. So let's take a look at the match hole bets. We'll take a look at the head-to-heads. There's no tie involved with these, which makes them a little bit better out there from the betting side. So you have Rahm versus Scheffler. Scheffler's a huge favorite. Don't hate Rahm at plus money, honestly, but probably not as good of a play as what we had with some of the 3-balls there. Siwoo versus McCarthy. Gotta like the ball striking floor of like a Siwoo Kim there. Minus 120 odds is probably fair, but I wouldn't be against betting something like that. Just trying to go after that ball striking with Siwoo Kim. Neiman versus Schauffele. Yeah, that's probably pretty fair. You have Cantlay versus JT. That's coin flip, and they have it as coin flip odds. So I agree with that one there. Mickelson versus Straka. Now, Mickelson is minus 105, so you're not getting plus money out there on Phil Mickelson. But with his course history, I'd rather have Mickelson than Straka, right? I know it sounds crazy, right? Straka is not, horrible by any means out here tour, but Phil Mickelson, I don't know. I think I'd rather go on that side, especially at this kind of course, right? That is so dependent on course knowledge and course experience. Yeah, Fitz versus McIlroy. Minus 150 is too much. And then, that Fox Glover's a no thank you. So, I guess those are a few spots you can take a look at on Hard Rock. Only person you've heard use the term slap dick, but you're supposed to use the term for other people. You can use it on yourself, though. Sometimes you're a slap dick, right? Is Scotty Scheffler the only player saving us from a 1-2-3 live guy sweep? Probably not. I think you're going to see some PGA guys show up. We'll have to see, though. They're not really doing it right now, right? It's a lot of live guys up there. And let's look at the top of the leaderboard. If it'll load. So, you got Scheffler up there, Hogard, Willett. I mean, Hogard's not live. Yeah, no. We're probably good. It's not going to be all live guys. You see that they're expecting up to 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts in the afternoon. And they were calling for that today. It never really materialized, right? There weren't 35, 40-mile-an-hour winds, but it looks sketchy, that's for sure. Guy who won the green jacket last year was a PGA guy. Yep, exactly. And their lines are always right on the money. Not sure who you're referring to. Maybe that's DraftKings or FanDuel. John Rahm. Ricky at 3.5 bogeys. Ooh, I like that. That's got to be Underdog, right? I like that. 1 second. Let's find that. And he's a PM golfer, right? Because all these guys they have up are PM guys. Now, he played pretty decently today. I like picking on Ricky. That's something that we've done here quite a bit, right? We've had a lot of spots where we've been picking on Ricky. It could be another one. So let me throw it in the shopping cart at least. What do I think about Brooks round 2? I think he's a good bounce back spot. He'll be low owned, that's for sure. What's going on, Samuel? Late, but better to have you now than never, right? Probably been said a lot. You just got here, but great to see me collab with DGen and the Ship It guys. Appreciate that, Blood Robot. Yeah, it's I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rick Run Good was saying that he's talking to Neiman he's taking Neiman as the low live guy. I'm thinking that it's probably going to be a course horse, but hey, Neiman's playing well, so I kind of understand it. On your way to work, got to catch up and build. Let's go. What's going on? Pavon doing good so far? Absolutely. I love to see it as somebody with exposure. After I started paying attention to the information you give, you're definitely doing much better in DFS, but still haven't gotten your big money badge from DraftKings yet. Hey, you got to work towards it. They don't just hand those out to anybody, right? You got to go out there and earn it. You'll get it eventually. So obviously, if it's getting more consistent for you, that's a good sign of things to come. Let's get it, man. Went back to the well on your man Rory for over 2.5 bogeys and hit once again. Hey, that's a wagon among all wagons, right? It's kind of like this Ricky over on bogeys. It's been treating you nicely if you've been betting it of late, that's for sure. And that Rory fade, that's been paying nicely if you've been taking it over the last few weeks. Phil for 3 birdies. When's his tee time? I need to know when he's teeing off. He's got a 12:48 tee time. Ugh. Right, on Prize Picks, he's at 2.5, right? So that's what you're asking for. And he's at 2.5 on Prize Picks. He averages like 4.5 birdies per round. Now, a lot of that sample is like him when he's like 25 to 30 years old, right? So obviously he's a much different player now, but he does have elite course history. I'm not going to play that myself, but I get why you would. I'll say that much. Ricky had 4 bogeys today. Yeah, so he went over, and that was him playing a really good round. That's probably as good as he's going to play this week. Now that I say that, right, he's probably going to go out there and smash. That's just how golf works and the karma and whatnot. But what did he end up at? Like +1 for his round? Let me search this up. Good old Ricky Fowler. Where's Ricky? Oh, he ended up +4? The fuck? He only had 1 birdie on the day. I guess that's why. Yeah, I guess kind of typical of Ricky. He hasn't been making shit. His putter hasn't been there over the last 3-4 weeks. And again, I don't want to get banned over there on the Masters site, but you see the scorecard there. You guys get the point. Let's see. All right, I think that's all I've got for the live stream, guys. We've been live for a little bit over an hour now, so we're gonna go ahead and cut it off here. My apologies. Probably a good time to get off. My throat's starting to kill me, but appreciate all the support here on the channel as usual. Smash that like button if you guys haven't already. Let's try and get over 100 likes on this live stream. And keep in mind, we're going to be going live for rounds 3 and 4 as well. So if you enjoyed this content, you found it helpful out there for round 2, make sure to tune in over the weekend for all of that content to come. Looking forward, of course, to that partnership with Ship It Nation and to go out there and try and make Friday, Saturday, and Sunday a profitable one. But specifically here, right, our Friday slate, make it a good one. So best of luck out there with your exposure, whether it's for props, DFS, whatever you're getting to out there for tomorrow. And again, best of luck out there and subscribe so you don't miss those streams to come.